Hello, everyone. My name is Deneen White, and I am the host of the Coffee in the Green Room podcast. Here in Coffee in the Green Room, we have those conversations you may not have on stage, but you have behind the stage before you go on stage. Today, I am so excited to have one of our amazing talent, Ryan Clapham, here. Ryan, thank you so much for being here today.
You're quite welcome, Deneen. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So, Ryan, let's talk about your background. Okay, it's quite extensive, but let's
That
start.
is.
Let's start with your service in the military. First of all, thank you for your service. Can you
You're
talk about
quite
your
welcome.
service in the military?
Yeah, I can talk about most of it.
Don't tell us the things you have to kill me because I'm
Okay.
not about that. I'm not
No,
about
I
that
won't
life.
do that. I started out in the infantry. Of course, I was not the woman I am today. And then from there, I progressed into computer systems repair when I went on active duty. And then from there, the Signal Corps got rid of the band I was working on. And I ended up going to a different repair school back in Fort Gordon that dealt with computer equipment, but that's the kind of job I can only say that there was computer equipment on this particular piece of equipment. And then I was stationed mostly at Fort Eustis, Virginia.
Okay.
I did go to Operation Uphold Democracy in Haiti,
Oh, wow.
um, and I was a newlywed at that point in time. So I went to buy the PX when I got my orders, grabbed a flour and a dozen Hershey chocolate bars and took
Hold on.
home.
One flour and 12 chocolate bars. I
Yes.
like this. I like where this is
And
going.
I told her, I'm like, honey, I got some good news and bad news. The good news is I love you. And I gave her the rose. And the bad news is I'm going to Haiti. And I gave her the chocolate bars. So then after I got back from Haiti, I continued on in my career um, at Fort Eustis still until I was medically discharged in 1998.
Wow. Thank you so much for your service. I
You're
really appreciate it. I
welcome.
come from a long line of military, so I always love to highlight that.
hmm
So tell me more about your background, Ryan.
Well, I've been told I've led a Renaissance life to the point that I started out in my careers as a chef, working in nursing homes, cooking, worked my way up through the kitchens to that point. And then I became an EMTA when I was in community college.
Wow.
I started out pre-med lab tech, ended up moving over to music because I had issues with chemistry class. And
That's quite
then
a jump
yeah, it
from med
is.
to music.
It is, but I was minoring in art the whole time too.
Okay.
And then they got rid of the music programs, so I went into radio and TV broadcasting, where I had my own radio show
Wow.
for a while during that school year. And then I ended up going on active duty, and I let my EMT go while I was on active duty, and because I was doing something totally different. Then when I got out, I went back to cooking and worked as a chef in a few kitchens and helped some restaurants open. Then I've done an extensive amount of things. Ended up going and getting my bachelor's um, I went into fashion design before I got my bachelor's.
Wow.
And so, yes, I can make the patterns, I can draft them, sew everything together, make the whole clothing line. Um,
You've
and
pretty much done everything essentially. It
just
feels like it.
about. But then from there, I went into. My wife was wanting to go back to school, so we found this college, and I went into alternative and complementary medicine for my bachelor's degree. And then from there, I moved into getting my master's of public health administration.
Wow.
And I was wanting to become a doctor. So I was pursuing my MBA right after that. I was working on getting in medical school, but
Jeez, Sue.
then the pandemic happened. And in a way, I was thankful because my funding for medical school fell through at the time.
Okay.
And I would have been stuck out of country. My wife would have been stuck home with the kids
Mhm.
during the lockdown.
Yeah.
It would have been harder for me to get back in country.
Yeah.
So that was a blessing in disguise. But during the pandemic, I became an author.
Nice.
And the genre I I write under a pen name, Lady K. Elkinhart, to keep that separate from my professional career
Yeah.
and the professional books I wrote during my master's classes.
Okay. Quite an extensive history you have there. So let's talk about now pursuing a career in acting and modeling.
Okay.
So what brought you to VIP Ignite?
Um, well, a while ago, I had filled out something online and I just kind of put it to the wayside. And it was just like, is this something I really am in love with right now? Because dealing in fashion design with models,
Mhm.
I'm like, well, that is a possibility. But acting, when I was younger, I was around theater.
Mhm.
So it was kind of in my bones. I did it in high school. Um, and then I've done a few things here and there as a puppeteer as a teenager. Um,
I don't
for
hear that one too
church.
often.
So, well, yeah, we had a puppet group for church, and so I learned puppeteering. And then I decided that we put our youngest daughter up for an audition, and the company that we were with, things didn't pan out too well,
Mhm.
but that happens sometimes.
Yeah.
And I was talking with Alicia about it and stuff, and she just gave me some great counsel.
Very direct counsel, I
Yes,
remember.
very. And then I stepped forward when my daughter decided she didn't want to do it anymore. I stepped forward and said, "Now's the time," because I got tired of seeing people playing roles that are me in the transgender community,
Yeah.
and it's just like that person's not trans. Why are they playing that role?
Yeah.
Um, they don't know our experience. They don't know what we go through
Yeah.
and the struggles we go through. And no sane man can do what we do. I have made men cringe when we've talked about different things. So,
Okay. So you're here because you want transgenders to be represented
yes,
properly.
we need to be represented properly. And I'm not just a transgender
No.
actress, I am also a female actress.
Yes.
And it is important that we get that voice out there that we're more than just one niche.
Yeah.
We are out here. We are,
Nobody is one box.
yeah,
And I think that the world needs to know that. Like nobody's just one box.
yeah,
There's so much more complexity to everyone.
yeah,
So I love that you're bringing attention to that, and also you do a lot of advocacy as well. Can
I
you talk a
do.
little bit about that?
Yes, in the process of donating blood, after I started transitioning, I had to fill out both forms, female and male. And I got to the point that's enough is enough. And with my master's thesis, it's all on transgender healthcare and policies and laws to help the transgender community. So for my public health degree, so I put that into practice, and I called the local blood bank that I go to, and I walked in. I thought I was going to have a meeting with two or three people. Long board table, 20 people or so around this board
Wow.
table. Um, and they already had some things in place, but I was able to talk to them and say, look, we have non-binary people that they're not comfortable with having to fill out a male or female form. We have transgender people that if they're female, they just need to fill out the female form because we've answered the same bloody questions we asked. If they're a transgender male, they need to fill out the male form.
Yeah.
And in the same liking, I brought up the fact that if there is a gay couple that have been in a monogamous relationship, they have no HIV, they have no AIDS, they're not at risk, then they should be allowed to give.
Yeah.
And at the same time, we found out we didn't know that there was a research study going on during the pandemic from the American Red Cross and One Blood that went up to the
Oh.
FDA. And when I was talking to them about the forms, they created something and sent up to the FDA. So that all came back now to where if you've been in a committed relationship, no matter your gender orientation, your or sexual orientation, as long as you're not on the drugs that block or reduce the amount of HIV,
Hmm.
or you're not on the PrEP because then you're promiscuous
Hmm.
in their eyes still with the government. As long as you're not on those and you're clean, you can get blood.
That's great because there's such a need for blood. You're always hearing
Yeah,
about blood shortages. So why stop a huge portion of the population from being able to give?
exactly.
It seems
And
common sense to me, but I'm not in the government.
yeah, but when I went through, when I was there for my first meeting with the blood center, they took me through the tour of the new facility. And in that facility, he took me into where all the blood goes into. So he talked to me about the testing that every vial goes through for
Hmm.
that bag, and they're all coordinated.
Yeah.
Then he took me into the cooler where the clean blood sits and the blood that's being tested sits on a different shelf.
Hmm.
So it's really cool to be able to see that process and
Huh.
to see the need firsthand
Yeah.
and know that my advocacy was going to make a difference.
That's
And it
awesome.
has, because now I'm getting the word out to the LGBT community that your voice has finally been heard. It's been a long time coming, but we can give, we can make a difference.
Awesome.
And people that have always been worried or have had issues in the past where a blood bag has slipped through, they can rest assured that with the testing that's going on
Mhm.
now, it's 500 times better than it was back in the 80s.
Yeah, I donated blood recently, and they tested it right on site, and then like I got blood results back.
Hmm.
I don't know if that I don't know how long that's been going on, but I was like, okay, it made me feel safer
Yeah.
for sure. There are so many safeguards in
Yes.
place.
And they've even got a new program out now that's called All of Us. And that program, anybody, even if you have a disease or something, can be part of that program because it's a study that's being done through Mayo Clinic and the NIH,
Okay.
National Institute of Health, um, that where they're doing genetic testing on blood to try to get healthcare more specific to the individual needs
Oh
versus
wow.
blanket healthcare.
Thank
So,
God for that.
yeah, people can go to the local blood centers or go on to allofus.com and log in and see what that process is and
Well,
what they can do.
that's awesome. Ryan, I've learned so much in this podcast. Thank you so much.
You're quite welcome.
Also, so for any of my listeners who want to follow along on your journey on everything that you're doing, where can they find you?
I am on Instagram on Mrs. Ryan Clapham, and then my Facebook is Ryan Clapham, um, but the one that looks like me now without a hat on because my old account did get hacked. So that does make it quite different. But I am also on TikTok on Mrs. Ryan Clapham. I'm getting ready to start my YouTube channel
Nice.
because one thing I didn't touch on was the screenplay I've written.
Yes. Well,
Uh,
you know what we'll have to
so
do? We'll have to do another
yeah,
podcast for that because we covered a
because
lot of ground in this
that
one.
is because my accolades have gone beyond what I've gotten to learning, producing, directing, and screenwriting.
It's
So
awesome. Well, we'll have to do part two. Are you willing to do
I
that?
am definitely willing to do that at any
Awesome.
time. You've got my phone number.
I do. Awesome. Thank you so much, Ryan, for being on
You're
the
quite welcome.
podcast. All right, listeners, if you're enjoying this podcast, make sure you hit subscribe on the Coffee in the Green Room podcast because you do not want to miss one of my guests. I have so many amazing guests coming up. So make sure you hit subscribe on the Coffee in the Green Room podcast, and we will see you on the next podcast. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.